remember the first sound I ever heard. Not my mother's heartbeat, not the wind, but the crack of a whip. I opened my eyes to a world that did not welcome me gently. The ground beneath me was cold, damp, and smelled of iron and dust. My legs trembled as I tried to stand, falling once, twice, again, until instinct forced me upright. I was a foal, new to life, yet life already felt like a battle. My mother stood beside me, her eyes soft, but heavy with something I did not yet understand. Fear. She nudged me gently, encouraging me to stand stronger, to walk, to live. I leaned into her warmth, believing for a moment that the world might be kind. But kindness, I would learn, was not meant for creatures like us. Days passed, or maybe weeks. I couldn't tell. Time was not something we measured. We only knew hunger, movement, and commands. My world was a fenced patch of land where the sky seemed close, but never close enough. I watched birds fly overhead, free, untamed, fearless. And something deep inside me whispered, "That is what you were meant to be, asterisk." But I was not born to fly. I was born to run. At first, running felt like joy. When I galloped beside my mother, the wind kissed my face, the earth responded to my hooves, and for those fleeting moments, I felt alive. Truly alive. But then, they came. Humans. Their footsteps were heavy, their voices louder than thunder. They carried ropes, chains, and eyes that did not see us, only our strength. I still remember the first time they touched me. Not with care, but with control. They separated me from my mother. I screamed, she screamed louder. But no one listened. That was the day I learned. Love could be taken away. In a moment. They tied a rope around my neck, tight enough to remind me who was in charge, loose enough to keep me alive. I fought. I resisted. I kicked. I bit. But I was small. And they were many. Training. They called it breaking, is what it truly was. Every day, they pushed me harder. Forced me to carry weight my body wasn't ready for. Forced me to move in ways that didn't feel natural. And when I refused, the whip spoke. At first, I didn't understand pain like that. It burned, it cut, it echoed through my bones. But worse than the pain, was the confusion. Why? Why was I being punished? For simply being myself? Days turned into months. And the wild spirit inside me slowly began to fade. Not completely, never completely, but enough to survive. Because survival meant obedience. I became faster, stronger, sharper. They praised me when I ran, punished me when I slowed. I learned their language, not of words, but of fear. And eventually, I stopped fighting. But deep inside, I never stopped remembering. They took me to races. Crowds gathered, shouting, cheering, betting. To them, I was not a living being. I was a number. A chance to win. The gates opened. And I ran. I ran like the wind was chasing me, like the earth was collapsing beneath me, like my freedom was waiting just beyond the finish line. But every time, there was another race. Another whip. Another cage. Victory did not mean freedom. It meant more chains. I saw other horses fall, some never got up again. Their bodies were dragged away like broken tools. No tears, no silence, just another race starting. That was when I realized. To them, we were replaceable. But I wasn't ready to disappear. One night, something changed. The air felt different, quieter, almost like the world was holding its breath. The gate to my enclosure wasn't fully locked. Just slightly open. I stood there, staring at it. My heart pounded. My legs trembled, not from weakness, but from possibility. Freedom. But fear whispered. What if you fail? What if they catch you? What if the world outside is worse? I closed my eyes. And then I remembered my mother. The way she ran, the way she looked at the horizon, like it belonged to her. That memory ignited something inside me. Something they could never break. I stepped forward. 1 step. 2 steps. And then I ran. Not for them. Not for victory. Not for survival. But for me. The ground felt different beneath my hooves, softer, alive. The air rushed past me like an old friend welcoming me back. I didn't know where I was going. But I knew I would never stop. Behind me, I heard shouting, footsteps, chaos. But I didn't look back. Because freedom does not live behind you. It lives ahead. I ran through fields, forests, rivers, my body aching, my lungs burning, but my spirit was finally breathing. Hours passed, maybe days. I collapsed under a tree, exhausted, but smiling in a way I never had before. For the first time in my life, I was not owned. I was not controlled. I was not broken. I was free. The world was not easy. I had to find my own food, protect myself, survive storms, loneliness. But every hardship felt different. Because it was mine. I met other wild horses, cautious at first, but slowly. I became one of them. No ropes, no chains, no commands. Only instinct. Only life. And sometimes, when the wind is just right, I still hear echoes of the past. The crowd. The whip. The fear. But they no longer control me. Because I chose to run. And I never stopped. If you ever see a horse running wild across an open field, don't just see an animal. See a survivor. See a spirit that refused to be broken. See a story. Like mine. Because I was not born to be owned. I was born to run. That sound. I can never forget it. The faint clinking of chains. The footsteps of humans. My body froze. But this time, I was not afraid. I was remembering. That day, when I was taken from my mother. That night, when I cried, and no one came. That pain, that sank into my soul with every strike of the whip. And then, I opened my eyes. This time, I was not that weak foal anymore. I was a wild horse. Free. Alive. And ready. The herd stood behind me. They felt it too. Danger had arrived. Dust rose in the distance. And then, I saw them. The same people. The same eyes. The same intentions. To them, we were still just animals. They began to surround us. Ropes, nets, shouting voices. The herd panicked. Some stepped back. Some tried to run. But I stood still. The leader looked at me, as if asking, "What will you do now?" Asterisk. I took a deep breath. And then, I stepped forward. Straight toward them. They thought I would break again. That I would bow again. That I would belong to them again. But this time, the story had changed. One man stepped forward, holding a rope. He reached out toward me. That moment. The moment where life changes. Either you bow down, or you discover who you really are. I struck the ground hard with my hooves. And then I ran. But not to escape. To collide. My speed, my strength, my rage, all became one. I charged straight into him. He fell. The rope slipped from his hand. The others stepped back. For the first time, they did not see animals. They saw power. The herd found courage. One by one, they began to run. But not to flee. To defend their freedom. Dust filled the air. The ground trembled. We were one. One force. One spirit. The humans back. Away. Fear filled their eyes. The same fear that once lived in ours. And then they left. Defeated. Silence fell. Only our breathing remained. Heavy, fast, but alive. I stopped. And looked at the sky. Today. For the first time. I didn't just feel freedom. I protected it. The leader walked toward me. He touched his head gently against mine. A signal. Of respect. Of acceptance. I was no longer just part of the herd. I was their protector. Days passed. The wounds healed. But the scars remained. And I wanted them to stay. Because they remind me of who I was. And what I became. Sometimes I run far away alone. Running with the wind. And I think, if that night I had let fear stop me, I would still be owned. Alive. But not living. If you are hearing this story, remember, freedom is not given. It is taken. And sometimes, you have to fight for it. I am just a horse. But my story is not only mine. It belongs to every soul that stands after being broken. To everyone who moves forward despite fear. Because in the end, life belongs to those who don't just run, but stand, fight, and win. I still run. But now, not to escape, but by choice. In my own world. With my own freedom. Because I was born to run. And I chose never to stop.